It is correct to say certain video games can improve hand-eye coordination, problem-solving skills, and the mind's ability to process information. However, too much games can be addictive and be less active for children, encouraging unhealthy eating, sitting down, becoming lazier, as the human mind is controlled by positive impact of playing games next day. Therefore, AI is very controversial depending on the intentions of those who are in control, because AI could either solve a lot of problems and also create them, because it all depends on how we decide to use them. So for our children, for our society, people in our society, as humans, we can only input and give the way what we think is better. But when it comes out of control, that's where, like, other people who are like in the corporations, they're in control. That's where there's a danger. So I think that is the future. We need to think about that in terms of democracy, in terms of people's rights, in terms of moral issues, human rights. We need to think about that. It's a good thing, but there are if we're not careful, it's very, it can be disastrous, basically. Because if the computer, end of the day, instead of humans, it has its own power. If we can't control it, that's it. It can control us, but we don't want to have that, so we need to think about that.
Okay, that was great. Got Pat now. Let me just say one thing before he speaks. Does anyone ever read the books of Robert Harris? Anyone know Robert Harris? Wrote Farmerland, Munich, Imperium, and so on. His latest book is Ghosts. I only discovered Robert Harris about 3 years ago, and now I'm reading practically all of his books. But Ghosts is about a hedge fund where an absolute brilliant guy develops an algorithm to actually predict what the hedge funds are going to do so they can make money. But the algorithm takes over. It suddenly becomes intelligent, and it cuts out the fail-safe methods that the human can stop it, and then, takes total control of the financial situation of the world. And that is not science fiction. I mean, it could happen in the future as algorithms develop and we can become in a robotic world. So how do we combat it? What do we do? Over to you. You have the answer.
Small brief. Thanks everyone. Thank you very much, Francis, for having me. Thanks for you all for turning up. I love being in London because there has to be about 10 future-oriented networks that one can turn up to of a month, so it's nice to be part of this one. The topic is, I guess, AI, big data and democracy. I'll just briefly introduce myself, 30 seconds, why I might be justified in standing up in front of you here talking about AI or democracy. For my sins, I'm a curator, which is basically just an editor who deals with stuff rather than words. And I'm a curator for NESTA, which is called the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts. And we've done a festival since 2013 called Future Fest, of which I was the sort of chief architect and have been a curator all the way through it. And that just looks around London and Europe and the world and says, let's be festive and enjoy the idea of the future rather than it being a dystopian possibility as it 80% is. Exactly, what someone said a few moments ago, to quote a phrase, to take back control of these machines. What is the control question? Who is controlling what? What is controlling who? How do we even begin to talk about that? And on the democracy bit, the only justification for me being here is, as someone might have said, I'm a co-initiator of something called the Alternative UK. It's inspired by a Danish party called Alternativet, which was a kind of modern, consultative, creativity-oriented politics. So we saw that, in the run-up to Brexit. Indra, my co-initiator, was in Denmark when Joe Cox was killed, and so she was surrounded by Danes saying, "What's happening? What's going to happen? What is the fate of your country? What's the fate of Europe?" So, from that point onwards, and obviously Trump just confirmed it. We thought we must try and respond to the Brexit Trump moment. It's maybe 3% in Scotland, and it's maybe 4 or 5% in the Nordic countries. But that's a ridiculously small percentage of the population to be determining generally